Imagine this. You wake up one morning, rub your eyes, stumble into the bathroom, and look into the mirror. But something feels different. Your reflection is not what it was yesterday. The shape of your face, your body, even your voice, it's all changed. Overnight, you've become the opposite gender. And no, this isn't a dream or a sci-fi movie plot. In this world, switching genders every month is completely normal. Here's the twist. It's not random. You're in control. Like flipping a switch, you decide when to change. One month you're male, the next female. And if you don't feel like switching, no problem. You can stay as you are until you're ready. Your body is basically on a monthly update system, and every 30 days you get the option to install a brand new version of yourself. Now, why does this matter? Because everything about society, love, work, fashion, politics, family, would shift in ways we can barely imagine. Think about it. Most of our history has been shaped by the idea that gender is fixed. Men are men, women are women. Whole systems of culture, power, and even inequality are built around that. But if everyone could experience both genders whenever they wanted, the world as we know it would completely transform. Let's paint the picture. Right now, debates rage about gender roles, equality, pay gaps, and stereotypes. But in this alternate reality, those arguments lose their foundation. You wouldn't be able to say, you don't know what it's like to be a man, or you don't know how hard it is to be a woman. Because the truth is, you would know. You'd have lived it, and that's not even the fun part yet. Imagine your dating life. You meet someone on Tinder, hit it off, go out for dinner. Everything's going well, sparks are flying. Then, a month later, you show up looking completely different. Do you still have the same chemistry? Do they still feel the same way about you? Or does your relationship reboot every 30 days like a Netflix trial period? And what about identity? If you could be both, which would feel more like you? Would you experiment endlessly, treating life like an RPG where you try out different characters? Or would you pick one and stick with it, afraid of losing yourself in the constant flipping? The very concept of gender identity would shift. Instead of being something you're born with, it would become something you choose, just like your hairstyle, your job, or even your favorite streaming service. One month you might say, yeah, I feel more comfortable as a guy. The next month, you know what? Being a woman this time feels right. And society would have to accept it because everyone's living the same experience. But here's where it gets even more fascinating. Biology isn't just about looks. Hormones, strength, reproductive systems, all of these would switch too. So when you change genders, you're not just changing the outside. You'd literally feel different. Your emotions, your energy, your appetite, even the way your brain processes things. Science tells us these can all be influenced by hormones. That means every month you'd experience life through a new lens. One month you might feel more competitive or risk-taking. The next, more empathetic or nurturing. So here's the big question. How would that affect your choices, your relationships, your ambitions? If every month was a chance to live life on the other side, what would humanity look like after just a few generations? That's what we're about to explore. All right, let's talk about the fun, and sometimes messy, side of this world. Everyday life. The first place where things get wild? Dating. Imagine you meet someone at a coffee shop. They're charming, funny, your type exactly. You start dating, share some amazing moments, maybe even fall in love. But then next month, surprise, they switch genders. Suddenly, your boyfriend is now your girlfriend, or your girlfriend is now your boyfriend. Do you stay together? Do you break up? Or does love simply become about the person and not the gender? This reality would force humanity to rethink relationships completely. Straight and gay labels might blur until they barely matter. Because how do you define attraction when your partner can change form every 30 days? Sexuality might become way less rigid, and maybe that's a good thing. People would learn to value personality, kindness, humor, and loyalty over physical traits. But let's be honest. Some folks would definitely freak out when their crush shows up looking totally different. And what about marriage? Wedding vows would need a major update. Instead of promising, "I'll love you as my husband or wife," couples might say, "I'll love you no matter what version of yourself you choose." Divorce rates could either skyrocket, because some people can't handle the constant change, or they might drop, because couples would constantly rediscover each other in new ways. Now, let's jump into fashion. Fashion designers would be living their dream. One month you're buying jeans, the next you're shopping for skirts, the next you're browsing both aisles. Wardrobes would double in size. Clothing brands would adapt by creating switch bundles, a package deal with both masculine and feminine versions of the same outfit. Imagine a company advertising, "Buy this suit, get the matching dress free for next month." But here's a twist. Gender-neutral fashion would probably become the biggest trend in history. Why? Because constantly buying new wardrobes is expensive, and most people would eventually prefer clothes that look good on any body. We'd see a rise in fluid designs, jackets that adjust to your shape, shoes that fit no matter the form, and hairstyles that work for both masculine and feminine looks. Okay, let's talk family life. Picture this. You're a kid in this world, and your parents switch genders regularly. One month you call someone mom. The next, the same person says, "Actually, I'm dad this month." Family roles would constantly shift. And honestly, this could be amazing. Kids would grow up learning flexibility, respect, and the idea that love isn't tied to gender. But it would also raise questions. Who carries the baby? Anyone could. Pregnancy would no longer be limited to women, because men could switch to female mode when ready to have children. Imagine your dad saying, "Yep, I carried you for 9 months." That would totally change how society views parenting. No more one-sided expectations. Both parents could share the experience of childbirth, nursing, and raising kids. And then there are friendships. Your best friend today might look and sound completely different next month, but they'd still be the same person inside. Friendships would need stronger foundations. You'd care less about appearances and more about trust and shared experiences. Think about it. If you're cool with your buddy, whether they're a dude or a girl, that bond is pretty much unshakable. But not all is smooth sailing. Social interactions could get messy. Crushes might come and go faster than ever. One month your friend's new look sparks feelings you never noticed before. The next month those feelings fade. It would be like living inside a never-ending teenage rom-com where everyone's role keeps changing. So here's the big takeaway for daily life. Everything we think of as normal would constantly reset. Dating, marriage, fashion, family, friendships, all of it would evolve into a more flexible, chaotic, and maybe even more honest version of itself. In the next section, we'll scale things up to society at large, work, politics, education, and how switching genders monthly would totally change power and culture. Okay, so daily life is already pretty wild in this world. But now let's zoom out and see what happens on a bigger scale, society and culture. First stop, the workplace. Right now we talk a lot about the gender pay gap. Studies show women often get paid less than men for the same jobs. But in this world, that debate changes completely, because the same person could literally work as a man one month and as a woman the next. Imagine the office gossip. Wait, didn't Alex get a raise last month when he was male, but now as female, the promotion offer is different? Employers wouldn't be able to hide discrimination anymore because people could test it themselves. You could literally walk into HR with proof. Here's what you offered me last month as a man. Here's what you offered me now as a woman. Explain. That would force companies to change fast. Leadership would also shift. The stereotype of men are better leaders or women are more nurturing wouldn't hold up when the same CEO could show both sides. Workers might even start switching genders strategically, choosing the one they think will get them more respect in a meeting, or the one that makes negotiating easier. The business world would become a live experiment in breaking stereotypes. Now, onto politics. Campaign slogans would get strange. Imagine a candidate saying, "I've led as both a man and a woman. I understand everyone's struggles." Voters might actually trust leaders more because they've experienced both perspectives. Debates about women's rights or men's rights would collapse into one big conversation about human rights. But there's a flip side. Some politicians might play the system. For example, one might stay male while running for office in a region with traditional values, then switch female to appeal to another demographic. Politics could become even more performative, with candidates changing faces depending on their audience. Now let's talk education. Classrooms would be fascinating. Teachers would constantly switch, showing students that knowledge has no gender. Textbooks would look different too. Instead of chapters like Men in History or Women in History, lessons would emphasize shared human experiences. And kids would grow up never knowing a world where gender locked you into certain roles. Careers like engineering, nursing, teaching, or piloting wouldn't be labeled for men or for women. Everyone would simply try everything, culture and entertainment. Oh boy, Hollywood would have a field day. Imagine an actor switching genders between movie sequels. Fans would argue, "I liked them better in the first movie as a guy. No way, they nailed the role as a woman in the second." Music, fashion shows, comedy, all would reflect this fluid reality. Celebrities might reinvent themselves monthly, staying relevant forever. Reality TV shows would follow people through their monthly switches, capturing the drama of how their relationships and careers change. Religion and traditions would face challenges too. Many faiths have long histories tied to gender roles. Rituals, leadership, even rules about dress, these would all be tested. Some groups might resist the idea of switching, while others might embrace it as proof that identity is deeper than appearances. New ceremonies might even emerge to celebrate each switch, like birthdays but for your gender reset. And then there's language. Pronouns would become interesting. Would people change their pronouns monthly? Or would society shift to a universal they for everyone all the time? Some folks might insist on being called he or she depending on the month, while others might say, "Forget it. Just use one word for me all year." Our entire way of speaking about people would have to evolve. Finally, let's talk culture shock. Traveling between countries would feel different depending on which gender you are at the time. Some societies that favor men might suddenly treat you better one month and worse the next. Tourism ads could even say things like, "Visit our country in female mode for free perks." Social etiquette, traditions, even laws would have to adapt to a world where gender is temporary. So here's the big picture. Society wouldn't just change, it would reinvent itself. Workplaces, schools, governments, religions, and cultures would be forced to break centuries of habits. For the first time in human history, stereotypes would be impossible to lock in, because everyone would eventually experience both sides. If there's one part of society that would go absolutely haywire in this world, it's sports. Right now, professional sports are divided into categories, men's leagues and women's leagues. But imagine if athletes could switch genders monthly. That system collapses overnight. Picture this. An NBA player dominates as a male guard in March, then switches to female mode in April and joins the WNBA. The question instantly becomes, what counts as fair? Would we need switch leagues, where everyone is free to swap whenever they want? Or would there be rules like, once you start the season in one gender, you must finish it that way? Sports boards would be holding emergency meetings every single week, and fans would have a blast, or a meltdown. Imagine your favorite athlete showing up completely different mid-season. Sports debates would never end. He was better as a guy. No way, she played smarter as a woman. Fantasy football drafts would turn into absolute chaos. Now let's talk about the Olympics. The Olympics are built on strict categories. men's sprinting events, women's swimming, weightlifting, gymnastics. But in this reality, those categories wouldn't make sense anymore. A runner could race as male one year, then female the next. Gold medal counts would be impossible to compare. The International Olympic Committee would probably give up and create a universal games where gender doesn't matter, just ability. That would be revolutionary. For the first time, athletes would truly compete as individuals, not as categories. But it's not all smooth sailing. People would try to game the system. For example, a weightlifter might stay male during training to build muscle, then switch to female for competitions to dominate a different category. Without strict rules, sports would become a mix of strategy, biology, and pure controversy. Entertainment would also explode with possibilities. Imagine Hollywood movies. An actor plays the lead hero in one film as a man, then reprises the same role in the sequel as a woman. That would spark endless fan discussions. Which version was better? Directors might even plan it on purpose, marketing it as, "See your favorite hero like never before." Box office sales would double just from curiosity. Music and pop culture would be just as wild. Picture a famous singer switching genders before their next album release. Fans would line up just to hear how their voice sounds in the new form. Some artists might use switching as part of their brand, releasing duet albums where both versions of themselves sing together. Imagine Beyoncé and Beyoncé 2.0, and then reality TV. The drama would be unmatched. Dating shows like The Bachelor or Love Island would turn insane. Contestants could literally reinvent themselves mid-season. You might fall in love with someone on week 1, only to meet their new version in week 4. Audience ratings would go through the roof. Social media would explode with memes, debates, and fan wars about which version of each contestant was the real one. Even fashion weeks would become twice as exciting. Models could walk the runway in one gender, switch backstage, and return as another. Designers would showcase collections that morph with the model's body. Clothing wouldn't just be fabric anymore. It would be transformation-ready art, esports, and video games. Players would start creating avatars of both versions of themselves, competing with dual identities. Streamers could switch on camera, making their channels feel like two-in-one shows. Fans would be hooked. But here's the kicker. All of this, the sports, the movies, the music, would push humanity toward one big question. Do we value people for who they are, or for which form they happen to be in this month? Entertainment would make it impossible to ignore that gender is temporary here, but talent, creativity, and personality stay constant. So while the stadiums, theaters, and red carpets go wild, another question lurks in the background. How would biology actually keep up with this? Switching genders isn't just about looks. It's about hormones, organs, and science. And that's exactly where we're headed next, the biology behind monthly transformations. Okay, so far we've talked about love, family, fashion, work, and even sports. But let's get serious for a second. How would this actually work? Switching genders monthly isn't just about changing clothes or pronouns. It's about a full-body transformation. First off, hormones. Hormones are the body's chemical messengers, and they're what largely shape our differences between male and female biology. Testosterone and estrogen control things like muscle growth, fat distribution, energy levels, mood, and even how our brains process emotions. For monthly switching to work, your body would need a built-in system to shut down one set of hormones and crank up the other, almost like flipping a chemical light switch. But hormones don't just change overnight in the real world. Puberty, pregnancy, and menopause all take years to shift the body. So for this scenario to be real, evolution would need to invent something like instant hormone rewiring. Your organs would have to respond immediately, with no lag time. One day you wake up feeling the rush of testosterone, the next month it's all estrogen. Now think about organs and anatomy. To fully switch, reproductive organs would need to transform too. That means ovaries becoming testes or testes becoming ovaries, complete with functioning sperm or eggs depending on the form. Even the uterus would need to appear and disappear on demand for pregnancy to work in female mode. It's like your body would carry a blueprint for both systems, tucked away, ready to activate when you choose. Scientists call this kind of ability biological plasticity, the power for a living thing to reshape itself. Some animals can actually do this. For example, clownfish can change from male to female when the dominant female in their group dies. Certain frogs and reptiles can switch sexes depending on environmental conditions. Nature already wrote some of the code. We just need to upgrade it for humans on a monthly cycle. But what about the brain? Studies show that hormones affect more than just muscles and body shape. They can influence emotions, risk-taking, memory, and even empathy. Switching genders monthly would mean your brain chemistry resets every cycle. Some months you might feel more aggressive or competitive. Other months, more nurturing or emotionally tuned in. That could be both a blessing and a curse. It would expand human experience, but it might also make identity feel unstable. Imagine going to bed confident and bold, then waking up more sensitive and cautious. Your personality would shift like the seasons. Health would be another big question mark. Constantly remodeling organs, bones, and hormones could be exhausting for the body. Energy demands would skyrocket. You'd need insane amounts of calories and sleep just to recover after every transformation. Maybe people in this world would have shorter lifespans, or maybe evolution would balance it out by giving us stronger regenerative systems. And here's another curveball: memory and identity. If your brain chemistry changes monthly, would you think differently enough that it feels like being two different people sharing one body? Would you remember experiences the same way? Or would one version of you look back on the other version's choices and say, "Why did I even do that?" Life would feel like playing tag with yourself across time. Let's not forget medicine. Doctors would need to be trained for patients who change anatomy every few weeks. Checkups, surgeries, and prescriptions would get complicated. A person in male mode might not respond the same way to a drug as they would in female mode. Imagine walking into a hospital. "Hi, I was here last month as a man, but now I'm female. Does my dosage change?" Entire branches of medicine would emerge just to handle monthly switches. And reproduction. That's where things get really interesting. Anyone could carry a child. Anyone could father one. Families could decide together who switches for pregnancy, who stays stable, and when. Surrogacy would vanish as a necessity, because every couple could choose to share the experience equally. That alone would be one of the biggest social revolutions in human history. So biologically, it's not impossible. We see clues of it in nature, but for humans, it would be the most dramatic evolutionary upgrade ever. Our bodies would essentially be shape-shifting machines, complete with two fully functional operating systems. But biology isn't the end of the story. Because if this reality were possible, the ripple effects would go far beyond hormones and organs. It would transform how we see power, privilege, and human identity itself. And that leads us to the big reveal in the next section. The single most shocking change this would bring to humanity. Up to now, we've talked about dating, family, fashion, politics, sports, and even biology. But here's the part that flips everything upside down. If humans could switch genders every month at will, the biggest change wouldn't just be in society or science, it would be in how we see ourselves. Here's the reveal: gender inequality would collapse. Think about it. Right now, much of human history is built on systems that favor one gender over the other. Men dominating politics, women burdened with caregiving, stereotypes about who's strong and who's sensitive. But in this alternate world, none of that could last. Why? Because everyone would eventually live life on both sides. That boss who used to say, "Women are too emotional for leadership," boom. Next month, he's female, experiencing those same emotions he once criticized. That person who said, Men have it easy. Next month she's male, living through those pressures firsthand. Arguments about who has it better would vanish, because every single person would carry the receipts of both experiences. Even at home, power struggles would look different. A father could experience childbirth. A mother could experience the social pressures men face at work. Every family would share responsibilities in a way we've never seen before, because you could literally trade roles whenever needed. Parenting, housework, income. No one could say that's not my job, because at some point, it is your job. And here's the twist. Over generations, this would reshape identity itself. No one would grow up thinking, I'm just a boy, or I'm just a girl. Kids would grow up knowing they could be both, anytime. That would completely dissolve the old categories of masculine and feminine. Instead, you'd just be you, a fluid person who gets to explore the full spectrum of human experience. The shockwave doesn't stop there. Imagine history written by people who lived as both men and women. Wars, laws, inventions, all filtered through perspectives that blend experiences. Art, music, and literature would capture emotions that we can barely imagine today. Humanity's creativity would double, because we'd no longer be limited to one fixed lens. And let's talk about empathy. If everyone knew exactly what it felt like to be on both sides of inequality, sexism might disappear. Harassment would plummet, because no one could dismiss another's struggles. You couldn't say, you don't know what it's like, because everyone would know. That shared understanding could bring a level of compassion the world has never seen. Of course, it wouldn't all be rainbows. Some people might try to exploit the system, switching genders for power, money, or manipulation. Others might struggle with identity crises, feeling like they don't belong anywhere. But overall, the most shocking outcome is this. Society would move closer to true equality than ever before. So the climax of this what if isn't just fun or wild, it's revolutionary. If humanity could switch genders every month, we wouldn't just change how we live. We'd change how we see each other. For the first time in history, gender wouldn't be a wall dividing us. It would be a bridge connecting us, and that, more than sports chaos or fashion revolutions, is the most surprising, world-shaking result of all. All right. So far, this new world sounds kind of amazing. Equality, empathy, endless fashion choices, fairer workplaces. But let's be real. Humanity never gets a superpower without a few major problems. If we could switch genders every month, the challenges would be just as intense as the benefits. First off, let's talk about identity. Right now, lots of people already struggle with the question, who am I really? Add monthly gender switching into the mix, and that question becomes 10 times harder. Imagine feeling confident one month, then waking up the next and realizing you don't recognize yourself anymore. Some people might love the constant change, but others would spiral into identity crises. Therapy offices would be packed. Entire new branches of psychology would pop up to help people handle monthly identity disorder. And what about relationships? Sure, some couples might embrace the fluidity, but let's be honest, many wouldn't. A person who married someone as a man might feel disconnected when their partner switches to female. Attraction could fade, jealousy could rise, and loyalty could be tested every 30 days. Divorce rates could skyrocket for people who can't handle the constant shifts. Or worse, some partners might pressure each other to stay in one gender, creating conflicts and resentment. Now let's look at society's darker side. Even if gender inequality starts to collapse, humans would find new ways to discriminate. People might create hierarchies based on how often you switch, or if you choose not to switch at all. For example, someone might say, "Oh, you're a constant. You've been male for years. You're boring." Or, "You switch too much. You're unstable." New prejudices would rise, replacing the old ones. And then, crime. Law enforcement would have nightmares. Think about it. If someone commits a crime in one gender and then switches, eyewitness descriptions become useless. facial recognition, fingerprints, even voice recognition, gone. The justice system would collapse under the strain. Entire new technologies would need to be invented just to keep track of who's who. Criminals would exploit the system like crazy. Now, let's talk politics and manipulation. Leaders could switch genders to win votes, manipulate laws, or gain sympathy. Some might even exploit stereotypes strategically. As a man, I'll negotiate this trade deal. As a woman, I'll appeal to empathy. Voters would constantly wonder if leaders were making choices for the people or just for personal advantage. Trust in politics could hit an all-time low. Then there's health. We already touched on the biology side, but let's imagine the risks. Constantly flipping hormones, organs, and brain chemistry could cause stress and breakdowns. Some people might not handle the switch well, ending up sick or stuck halfway. Imagine someone's body not fully completing the transformation, neither male nor female caught in between. Hospitals would overflow with botched switch cases. Black markets might rise for drugs or illegal methods that promise smoother transitions. And let's not forget religion and culture wars. Some groups would embrace the switching as natural evolution, while others would see it as unnatural, even sinful. Entire movements could form around resisting the monthly switch, demanding gender purity or rejecting the new system. Protests, arguments, even wars could erupt over the question, should we all keep switching or should some stay fixed? Humanity might gain equality, but lose peace in the process. Finally, here's the scariest danger, losing the sense of permanence. If everything about you changes monthly, what stays the same? Would people still commit to long-term careers, marriages, or goals? Or would society start living in short cycles, always planning only for the next month? That could make humanity lose its stability. Imagine a world where no one saves money, builds families, or makes long-term commitments because, hey, next month I'll be someone else anyway. Progress could stall because no one thinks beyond the next switch. So while gender switching might erase old inequalities, it would replace them with new struggles, identity confusion, crime, politics, health risks, and chaos. The dream could easily turn into a nightmare if humanity doesn't adapt. So, let's step back and look at the big picture. If humans could switch genders every month at will, the world would become a mix of chaos, comedy, and deep transformation. On one hand, dating, family life, and fashion would never be boring again. Workplaces would finally face their biases head-on, and politics might gain leaders with truly balanced perspectives. Sports would explode with controversy, and entertainment would rewrite itself monthly. Biologically, we'd become some of the most adaptable creatures ever to walk the earth. But on the flip side, the dangers are just as real. Identity crises would multiply, relationships could collapse under the strain, and society might trade one form of discrimination for another. Law enforcement, health systems, and governments would be in a constant scramble just to keep up. And the biggest risk of all, losing our sense of stability, could make long-term progress harder than ever. So what's the takeaway?